welcome to the second class of Movement ABCs. Last class we talked about the spine, and today we're going to focus primarily on the hips. Thank you to those that were able to fill out the feedback form from our last class. That is really so helpful to me as I'm trying to figure out how to communicate well these concepts and as we move together. So there were a couple questions on there, and some of those will get answered as we move along. But if you're ever confused about anything or want to chat about something, reach out with an email, or we can get on a call after we move together too. So last time we talked a lot about our bodies tend to take the path of least resistance. So we naturally do what's easiest to conserve energy. And when it comes to the hips, one of those things is we tend to move our pelvis and our femur bone together. So if I can map that out for you, this is our pelvis right here, that bony structure that is also contains our pelvic floor. And if you want to feel along with me just to map it in your own body, you have your hip points, these two bones that stick out right here. They're also called the ASISs. Those are what I refer to a lot as headlights. So that can help us have awareness of where our hips points are in space. You also have your sit bones, which are the two bones that your butt cheeks hug. And then you have your hip socket. And the hip socket is a ball and pelvis joint, so it has a lot of ability to move in a variety of ways. Most of what we do is in the sagittal plane, where we're moving our hips like this. But we have the dynamic ability to move it in all ways. And so increasing that mobility in your hip socket will, in your yoga practice, will help prepare you for moving it in different ways in the real world. So even if you were to, pivot, if you're playing a sport, or, you trip and you move it in a weird way, if you've been practicing doing that, you're less likely to bruise injury. Mobility in the hip socket also affects the joints the rest of the way down, so primarily your knees and your ankles. And lack of mobility in the hips can often come out in kind of blowing out or tearing out a knee. My son plays a lot of soccer, and I see this with a lot of boys. They're super stiff in their hips. They have no ability to move them another way. And so when they're pivoting and turning all the time, there's so much pressure on their knees. And so you see knee injuries a lot. So what I talked about, separating the movement of the pelvis from the femur bone, which your femur bone is the bone where your thigh is. An example of that is if I say, lift your leg behind you, most of us will go like this. And so you're not just moving your leg, you're moving your pelvis in order to get your leg up. And so lift your leg behind you without moving your pelvis is kind of like this. It feels like you have a much smaller range of motion, but what you're actually doing is focusing the motion in the femur bone so that we can strengthen that hip socket. And all the strength isn't just coming from our back and core all the time. And so this also brings a dynamic movement into our lives, because we spend so much time sitting in chairs where we're just like this. And so moving that hip socket is like oiling, the chain that bringing more movement in, again, just helps our bodies get used to it, so it's not suddenly surprised if we have to do it on accident or because we're trying to play a sport or do an activity. So separating the pelvis from the femur bone, and then bringing dynamic variability into the hip socket primarily through internal and external rotation. And so we're going to move together and talk about what that means. So why don't you go ahead and find a position standing up on your mat today. You can stand in a way that's comfortable for you. Maybe feet about hips width apart. And bringing your weight gently back into your heels. Excuse me. As you bring your weight back into your heels, let your spine grow tall. And slightly tuck your chin and move the head back. Begin to bring your awareness to your breath, to your inhale and your exhale. And become comfortable with your space on the mat and your presence here today. I am breathing in. I am breathing out. Maybe you notice some of the sounds around you outside or in, and you can just let them be part of your experience and just come back to the breath. In and out. As thoughts come in about maybe things that happened earlier today or things that are coming, you can simply note planning, thinking, worrying, and let that fall away as you bring your presence to this space right now. Take a deep breath in to fill your rib cage, and then exhale all the way out. If your eyes are closed, you can open your eyes. And let's move together. If you have a yoga block, you can use that right now. If you don't have a block, you could stack a couple of books up or find something to stand on that's just going to raise you a few inches off of the floor. So if you need to take a couple of minutes to do that, please do. And then once you have that, we're going to place your left foot on the block to stand up. Now, if that is already too unstable, feel free to be by a wall that you can put your hand against or grab onto a chair for balance, because this is going to be some balance work. So place your foot on the block or on your books, whatever you have. If your foot is bigger than the item you're using, continue to just try and make sure your heel is on the block. Now what we're going to do is a pelvic list, and I'm higher than my screen right now, so I'll try and do this. There, so you can still see me. And this brings strength into the standing leg hip socket. So all you do is press into the block with your left leg to bring your right leg up. Press into the block with the left leg to bring your right leg up. Now this is an important movement for walking, running, a lot of the very normal activities that we do, to be able to raise your leg up from the hip socket. So if one thing you don't want to do is you're not hiking up the right hip. So if I hike up the right hip, this is what it looks like. We're not doing that. We're not bending in here. This stays perfectly straight in the right side, and you're pressing into the block with the left foot to bring the hip up. Try to do about 10 of these. And it's a very small movement. And then come back down, and we'll go to the other side. You may notice a difference on each side, and that's normal that you have more mobility on one side than the other. But now we're going to press your foot into the right side, press your right foot into the block to raise your left side up. Once you get used to the movement, try to do about 10 of them. Very small movement, and you'll probably start to be able to feel it in that hip socket pretty quickly. Once you've done that side, let's step down and we'll go to the other side again. Again, making sure your heel is on the block, stepping up, placing your weight gently back into your heel, and then pressing the left foot into the block to raise the right leg up. Doesn't have to come real high. Doesn't even have to come even with your other foot, although that's generally where I try to get it. But you just want to really focus on letting the movement come from that left side. Once you've done about 10, you step down, and then we'll do the other side again. So your right foot onto the block, press your foot into the block to raise your left side up. Try to go slowly and really feel the movement. You can even try to picture your hip sliding to move the other leg up. Try to do a couple more, and then we'll come back down. You can move your block out of the way, or book, whatever you're using, and come to stand back on your mat with legs about hip width apart. And again, place your weight back into your heels. Align your spine like we talked about last week, tucking the chin slightly and moving the neck or the head gently back. Bring your weight onto your left foot to raise your right foot up out in front of you. And we're going to internally and externally rotate the leg. So your movement for this one comes from the hip socket. You're not moving your ankle. You're not letting the movement come from your knee. All the movement is this hip socket turning out. This is external rotation. Turning in, internal rotation. So you're also not moving your waist. You're not doing this. Okay, pelvis is forward. Those headlights are shooting straight. And the movement is just in that hip socket. Again, if you need some balance, feel free to grab onto something to stabilize yourself. And let's try to do 3 more. And then come back down. Center yourself on your feet. Bring your weight back into your heels, making sure you're aligned again. And then bringing your weight to your right foot, lift your left foot up. Being careful not to pop out this hip. So I call this sassy hip. You don't want your hip to pop out. You want to keep it straight. And then just let that movement come from the other side. Now, if you experience popping in your hip when you do this, try to play with the position of your foot. So the foot can be in any position when you do this. It could be pointed, it could be flexed. But if you notice it popping, see if changing the position of your foot helps that. Then the popping isn't necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't always feel very good either. Let's do about 3 more together. And then come back down. Reestablish your position, feet about hips width apart, aligning your spine, tucking your chin, and letting your spine grow tall. Now this time, again, we're going to shift our weight onto the left foot, keeping your weight gently in the back of your heel. You're going to lift your knee up in front of you, and then bring your leg out to the side, behind you, turning your leg, so behind you, and then internally rotating your leg, and then back up. So you're kind of making a full circle. Again, the knee comes up, out to the side, behind you, and then internally rotating the leg to come back up. So in this one as well, pelvis stays still. Headlights shoot forward. We're not moving the pelvis to do the work. We're simply moving the femur bone or the leg. So lifting your leg up, out, behind, and then back up. Out, behind, and back up. Up, out, behind, and back up. So you're doing a full circle. It's a very articulated movement, and again takes balance, so feel free to help yourself with the balance if you need it. So let's do one more, and then we're going to switch directions. So now we're going to go behind you, then externally rotate, bring it up and forward. Behind you, externally rotate, up and forward. If you need to take a break, just set your foot down, take a few breaths, and then come back to the movement. Let's do one more. You may be feeling it in your standing leg too, and that's good for your hips and your balance as well. So shake it out like I was doing if you want to. Take a deep breath, and then bring your weight into your right foot to lift your left leg up. And again, we're going to bring our leg out, and then internally rotate, bring it behind you, and back up. Out, internally rotate, behind you, and back up. Out. Doing that full circle with the left leg. Taking it nice and slow. It's controlled movement. You have to use your brain too. Do one more, and then we'll switch directions. So we're going to go behind, externally rotate, bring it up and forward. Make sure you're not popping out the hip on your right side, but pressing that foot into the mat and still keeping your weight gently back in your heel. Make sure you're not holding your breath. Keeping your shoulders relaxed down from your ears and your face relaxed. All that movement goes into your leg. Let's do one more. And then come down again. You can shake it out. And then you're going to come to all fours on your mat. I'm going to adjust this again so you can see me. So coming down into tabletop position, getting those blocks out of the way. And knees are about hips width apart, hands are under your shoulders. Press your hands into the mat to spread your shoulder blades wide. And then we're going to do the articulated cat and cow that we worked on last week. So tuck your tailbone to point towards the floor and begin to round your spine one vertebrae at a time, all the way up to your neck. Inhale and exhale, pointing the tailbone up towards the ceiling and bringing an arch into the spine, all the way back up to your neck. And then again, tucking the tailbone, pointing it down towards the floor and rounding the spine. Noticing any sticky spots, pointing the tailbone up towards the ceiling and bringing an arch. Do a few more at your own pace. Keeping your cheeks relaxed. Continuing to press into the mat with both hands. Couple more. And then coming back to neutral. And then tucking your toes, pressing back into downward dog form. Pedaling out the feet, getting a nice stretch in the calves. Inhale, exhale forward to plank. And then back into downward dog. Forward into plank. Really pressing into the mat with both hands. And back into downward dog. Place your left knee down to the mat and bring your right foot forward into a lunge position. Hands are on both sides of your foot and really press your right foot into the mat. As you do that, press into the mat with your foot, with your heel and the ball of your foot, and you should be able to feel that kind of kick on your hamstrings and your glutes. Keep your foot pressing into the mat. And this is also a time where if you have blocks and you need to raise the floor up for better comfort, you could be in this position. Inhale and exhale. Continuing to press the right foot into the mat. You're going to extend your left leg behind you, but do that without moving your pelvis. So again, think about your pelvis just being still and steady, and you're going to gently extend your leg. Now this is an extremely small movement, coming up onto your toes. You may not even be able to lift your knee off the ground, and that's totally okay. Thinking about doing it and trying to do it is still putting the work into that hip socket. So together, you're going to bring your heel back towards the wall behind you, trying to lift your knee off the floor by doing that. But don't move your pelvis. So hips stay in exactly the same position, and it's a very, very small movement. Inhale and exhale, just lifting that leg up, extending your leg behind you. And then if you're able to get it up off the ground, let's just hold together for a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let it come down. Place your hands on each side of your foot. Step back into downward dog. Inhale and exhale. Come forward into plank, back into down dog, and then step your left foot forward and bring your right knee down. Again, pressing your left foot into the mat, so the heel, the ball of your foot, the toes are all touching down, pressing into the mat, really turning on that left leg. And then you're going to reach your heel behind towards the wall behind you to try and lift your knee up off the ground without moving your pelvis. Tap your knee back down and lift it up. If you're not able to get your knee off the ground without moving your pelvis, simply continue to think about it and work at that. You should still be able to feel the work happening in your leg. Inhale and exhale. Continue to press that left foot into the mat for stability. And there's a lot of work going on in the legs. Be careful not to collapse into your shoulders either, but press your hands into the mat. And if you're getting your knee up off the ground, let's hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Place your hands down if they aren't already. Step your left leg back into downward dog. Take a couple of breaths here. And then we're going to step the right foot forward and raise yourself up into a lunge, a high lunge, but bend your knee so that you're in sort of a 90-degree angle with each leg. And the headlights of your hip sockets are shooting directly forward. So there's not like this. And the 90-90 lunge. And get used to this position. Really press the right foot into the mat again. Press your left toes into the mat. And this is a pretty strong lunge. Let's inhale together. Full 360-degree breath to fill the rib cage, and exhale. And then place your hands on your rib cage like we did last week. Inhale to fill the rib cage. And exhale, as you exhale, turn your rib cage to the right. So hips are staying in the same place, just your ribs are moving. Like the lid of a jar. Come back to center and rotate again to the right. Inhale and exhale. Come back to center and again to the right. Inhale and exhale, and we'll hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Place your hands on both sides of your foot and step back into downward dog. Inhale and exhale, and this time step your right foot forward. Press your foot into the mat to come up into that 90-degree lunge. I said the wrong foot. So if you're following me, step back and step your left foot forward. We'll try that foot. Press your left foot into the mat to come up into the 90-degree lunge. And again, the headlights of your hips are shooting forward. Press the left foot into the mat. Press your right toes into the mat. Inhale and exhale. Place your hands on your rib cage. Let's inhale to fill the rib cage. Exhale to contract it back down and turn to the left. Come back to center and again turn to the left. Inhale. Exhale back to center. Inhale to the left. Exhale back to center. Just turning your rib cage like the lid of a jar. Hips are facing forward. Feet are pressing into the mat. And let's hold. For 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Placing your hands down on each side of your foot to step back into downward dog. Come forward into plank. Back into downward dog. Forward into plank. Pressing your hands into the mat to spread your shoulder blades wide. Back into downward dog. And this time you're going to bring your knee down, your left knee down, and your left hand comes to the center of the mat to come up into a side plank. Now if this is easy for you, you can lift your right leg up to give a bit more of a challenge. Inhale and exhale. And let's hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Coming back down. Pressing into downward dog. Coming forward into plank. And then placing the right knee down. I'm going to turn around, but you stay in the same place. Placing the right knee down, turning it, and coming up into a side plank. Lifting the left leg if you feel comfortable, or just keeping it down if that's enough for you today. Inhale and exhale. Press into the mat with that right hand to stabilize your shoulder and keep the chin tucked and your spine in line. Let's hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Again, pressing back into downward dog, coming forward into plank. Back into down dog, and take a full breath here. And then on your next inhale, step the right foot forward. Press into the mat with the right foot to bring yourself up. This time we're in a full high lunge. So the leg can be straight or a little bit bent behind you. And you're going to really press your right foot into the mat so that your full foot is pressing down. And you're going to begin to shift your weight forward, coming onto your toes of your left foot, and coming up into sort of a warrior 3. So you lift your leg behind you. Now in this position, come back a little. We're not worried about squaring the pelvis now. Go ahead and let your leg lift with your pelvis. And the work is really in the standing leg. So keeping your weight back into your heel. Try not to lean onto your toes, but your toes still stay on the ground. And really pressing your foot into the mat so that that right hip does not pop out. And then extending the left leg behind you, reaching your heel towards the wall. Hands can be on your hips. They could be out in front of you, or even more like an airplane. Inhale and exhale to bring your left leg behind you. Bend your right knee to step back down. And then we're going to come back up. So pressing that right leg into the mat, bringing your weight forward, keeping your weight back into your heel as you rise up and your left leg comes behind you. Being careful not to pop that right hip out, keeping your weight in the right heel and extending your left heel to the wall behind you. Again, keep the chin slightly tucked. your spine reaches straight towards the wall in front of you. Coming back down, place your hands on both sides of your right foot, stepping back into downward dog. Let's come forward into plank, back into down dog, forward into plank, back into down dog, and then inhale your left foot forward, pressing your left foot into the mat to bring yourself up into a high lunge. Take a minute here. Give yourself a full breath to get used to this position. And then placing the left foot firmly onto the mat and beginning to place your weight in your left foot as you bring your right leg behind you. Bring your weight back into the heel of your left foot, being careful not to pop out your hip. And then reach your right heel to the wall behind you. Keeping the chin slightly tucked and the face relaxed. And challenging your arms as much as you feel comfortable today. If you lose your balance, just come right back to it. And then bend your left knee to set your right foot back down. Take a minute or a few seconds, because then we're going to come right back to it, popping up, keeping your weight into the heel of your left foot, not popping out your hip, and keeping your spine straight and long. Take some full 360-degree breaths for a nice inhale and exhale. And then place your right leg down behind you. Turn both feet so that they're parallel and legs are wide. And then we're going to go into a wide forward fold. So hands on your hips and bend at the pelvis. So you're not bending at the waist, tilting your pelvis back, moving your butt behind you. And feeling a nice stretch in the back of your hamstrings. Now you can add a little pelvis shimmy where you're just turning your pelvis in the hip socket to the left and to the right. Giving yourself a slow little massage in each socket. If you'd like to come all the way down, you can, but I encourage you to let your bend come from your pelvis and try to keep your spine straight. This is also a great time to use the blocks if you have them. Inhale and exhale. Do that little hip shimmy again. And then we'll come back up and step your feet together back into Tadasana. Feet are about hips width apart. Spine is straight and long and your weight is gently back into your heels. And let's take a full inhale and exhale. And again, inhale and exhale. And again, let's bring your weight into your right foot so that you begin to balance on that leg. Be careful not to pop out this hip. So you want it to stay straight and in. And we're going to do a version of tree pose. So bringing your left knee up, you're going to turn it out, but don't place it on your right leg. So the work here is really in trying not to pop out the right hip and keeping your left leg up. From there, you can do prayer or lift your hands up over the head, whatever feels right to you today, and just balance here. If this feels super easy and you want more variability, you could also rotate your leg in and out. Don't forget to breathe. Keep your face relaxed and try not to scrunch your shoulders up towards your ears. And continue to keep the weight slightly back into the heel of your standing leg. A couple more breaths here. And then placing your foot back down, shaking your legs out after that balancing work. Inhale and exhale, and then bringing your weight to the left foot. Again, being careful not to pop that hip out. Bring your right leg up and out, balancing it next to you, trying not to place it on your leg. Inhale and exhale. Lift your arms up if you'd like. Keeping the spine straight and long. Chin is slightly tucked. Face is relaxed. You can add the movement of your right leg if you'd like. Couple more breaths. Placing your foot back down. Arms down. Inhale and exhale. Bring your weight back into your heels, bringing your butt out behind you, coming into a squat. So really making sure your weight is in your heels for this one too. And your hips are drawn back behind you, spine is straight and long. And we'll just hold. Inhale and exhale. Let's hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Standing back up. Any movements that you need to loosen up. Inhale and exhale back into the squat, keeping your weight in the back of your heels, moving the hips behind you. And then before standing back up, we are going to go down to our mat. So if you're able, come as far down as possible in your squat until you can sit all the way down. Now, if that's not possible, catch yourself at any point and lower yourself down to the mat. Once you're on your mat, knees are bent, feet are out in front of you, and we're going to roll all the way down, challenging your core as you come down, trying to go as slowly as possible. If you're like me at this point, there may be a little bit of shaking in there. Nothing wrong with that. Coming all the way down. Legs are bent, feet are on the floor. And let your shoulders relax into the mat. Getting comfortable laying down after all the standing we've been doing. But don't relax too much because we're not done with the work yet. Last class we did the dead bug. We're going to return to that. So you're going to bring your feet up off the floor. Now remembering to keep a neutral pelvis. So even if you want to place your feet back down for a minute. You roll the pelvis, so tuck the tailbone so the lower back pushes into the floor. Tilt the pelvis so that it raises up, and then you come to a neutral position where your lower back is just up a little bit off the floor. You want to keep your pelvis in that position as you lift your legs up. Inhale and exhale. Bring your arms up. Now as you inhale and then exhale, you're going to extend the right leg out and the left arm out. Bring it back to center. Inhale, and as you exhale, think about blowing out the candles. So it's a big exhale. Left leg out, right arm out. Back to center. Keeping your neutral pelvis. Check it. Make sure you haven't rounded or arched from the floor. And opposite leg, opposite arm. Back together. Inhale, exhale, opposite leg, opposite arm. Inhale, exhale, opposite leg, opposite arm. Try not to contract your face. Try to keep it relaxed. Try not to scrunch your shoulders up to your ears. And let that exhale really give you stability in your core as you extend the limbs. Do 2 more on each side if you're able, or you can rest when you need to. And then place your feet back to the ground. You can rest your arms back on the ground. Inhale and exhale fully out. Take a minute to catch your breath after that before we go up one more time. When you're ready, you're going to bring your legs back up, keeping that neutral spine. Bring your arms up. Inhale and opposite leg, opposite arm, coming back together. Opposite leg, opposite arm. Try to do 10 full rounds, so 10 on each side. 1, 3, 4. Using that exhale to extend the leg and the arm together, keeping your neutral spine and your face is relaxed. Let's go to 7. 8. Stop when you need to if it's too much or you're losing your form. And you can return to it when you get your strength. And 1 more on each side. And then coming back down. Letting your feet rest on the mat, your arms on the mat. For a full inhale and exhale. Now you're going to grab your strap or scarf, whatever you have. And again, keeping that neutral pelvis, so we're not rounding into the floor or tucking too much. You're going to place your strap on the forefront of your foot or the ball of your foot and extend the right leg. So again, this is tricky. You don't want to round your back into the floor. To do that, if you do that in even why don't you try it? When you round your back into the floor, your leg goes higher. But we want to just focus the movement in the hip joint. So keep that neutral spine and just let your leg come up as much as it can without rounding your back. You can extend the left leg. Getting a nice stretch in the back of your leg and your calf and your hamstring. And then you're going to internally and externally rotate your leg like we did standing up. So this is a small movement from the hip socket. You're not moving your ankle. You're just moving your hip to turn the whole leg in and out. Couple more internal and external rotations, being careful to keep that neutral spine, pelvis stays in the same place. And then on your next external rotation, you're going to bring your leg out to the right side for a stretch in the inner thigh. Inhale and exhale. And inhale and exhale. Come back to center. And then again, continuing to keep that external rotation of your leg, you're going to cross your leg over to the left side. Remembering not to round your back into the floor, but getting a wonderful stretch on the outside of your leg, on your IT band. Giving yourself nice full breaths. Letting your heart rate come down. Bringing your leg back to center, releasing the strap, bringing your right leg down, and then hooking your left foot with the strap to repeat this on the other side. So again, the strap goes not right in the middle of your foot, so not on your arch, but right on the ball of your foot. Being careful not to round your back, but keep a neutral spine. Give yourself a nice calf and hamstring stretch. If you don't have a strap, you can do this simply by holding your leg and flexing your foot, but still being mindful of your lower back and keeping it neutral. And then when we get to the internal and external rotation, you're doing the same thing. You could also do it without anything, without your hands or a strap at all. But pressing into the strap kind of gives you a deeper stretch. So if you're not already internally and externally rotating the left leg, the right leg can be bent or you could extend it, as long as you don't collapse into your lower back. And then when you're on your next external rotation, bring your leg out to the left side, giving your adductors a nice stretch. Inhale and exhale. Bringing your leg back up, keeping that external rotation and moving it over to the right side. Only as much as you can without losing your form in the other spots. Face is relaxed, shoulders are relaxed. Coming back to center and releasing the strap, placing that to the side. And then bend both knees, feet are flat on the ground, and they can be a little bit more than hips width apart. And then we'll just do what we call 90-90, letting them fall to each side, rotating back and forth. This is very loose, very easy. Preparing to rest. After all that good stability and mobility work we did in the hip sockets, just letting them fall freely. And then when you're ready, you can come to a resting position that's right for you. Legs can be extended or knees bent. Letting your breath calm down, letting your shoulders relax into the floor. Feel the ground holding you up from underneath you. Feeling all the great work that we did in this practice. And thanking yourself for putting the time into it today. Letting your body rest and enjoy the good movement that you did. I'm going to come up and read you a quote, and then I'll stop the video, but please remain in resting pose for at least 10 minutes or as long as you have today. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. George Bernard Shaw. Thank you for joining me today. Peace be with you.